There's a place hidden in the heart of the American Southwest, a barren landscape where the wind howls through jagged hills and dust clouds swirl endlessly under a cloudless sky. Here in the vast emptiness of the New Mexico desert, an event occurred that changed the world forever. For one brief moment on July 16, 1945, the ground trembled, the sky lit up, and the course of history was forever altered. It wasn't a natural disaster. No, this was a moment of mankind's ambition, and it would mark the birth of a new age, one whose consequences would echo through every corner of the planet. The name of the place? The Trinity Site, and the moment, the first ever detonation of an atomic bomb. Imagine it, the blistering heat of the desert sun, the dry wind whipping through the scrub brush, and then a blinding flash, so intense that it briefly outshone the very sun itself. The ground shook as if the earth itself was rebelling against the power unleashed. This was the birth of the atomic age, and it happened not in some distant, far-off land, but here, in the remote and seemingly forgotten expanse of New Mexico. But the story of how New Mexico came to host such a monumental event begins long before that fateful morning in 1945. It starts in the early 1940s with a quiet, determined group of scientists, military officials, and political leaders who were united by one common goal: to beat the Nazis in the race for the atomic bomb. These were the architects of a new kind of warfare, one where the power of the atom could be harnessed to end the war once and for all. But how did this singular desert location become the secret birthplace of this terrifying weapon? The answer lies in a combination of geography, ambition, and the urgency of war. The vast, arid expanse of New Mexico offered an ideal location for such a secretive project. Remote enough to avoid prying eyes, yet accessible enough for the necessary infrastructure to be put in place, this place became the birthplace of the Manhattan Project, the secret American initiative that would eventually develop the atomic bomb. New Mexico wasn't the first place the military considered for the project. In fact, the United States had initially looked at several locations before deciding on the New Mexico desert. The idea of testing such a powerful weapon in populated areas was, of course, out of the question. But as early as 1942, the U.S. Army had been searching for a site that would provide the space, secrecy, and control needed to build and test the atomic bomb. After scouring the country, they chose the Jornada del Muerto Desert, its name meaning Journey of the Dead Man, which ironically seemed all too fitting for the project that would unfold there. The barren landscape, dotted with nothing more than scraggly plants and dry soil, would soon bear witness to one of humanity's most monumental moments. Behind the scenes, a clandestine operation was unfolding. A group of brilliant scientists, physicists, engineers, and chemists gathered in a hidden laboratory known as Los Alamos. Led by J. Robert Oppenheimer, a quiet genius who would later be known as the father of the atomic bomb, the Los Alamos scientists worked feverishly day and night to crack the mysteries of the atom. Their work was nothing short of miraculous, harnessing the raw, unimaginable power of atomic fission, a process that split the atom and released vast amounts of energy. But they were racing against time. In those early days, the future of the world seemed to hang in the balance. The Nazis, under Adolf Hitler, had already made significant strides toward developing their own atomic bomb. If they succeeded first, it was feared they would gain a terrible, uncontestable advantage in the war. So, the race was on, not just for the bomb, but for survival itself. It was in this atmosphere of fear and urgency that New Mexico became the unlikely cradle of a new age in history. By 1943, Los Alamos had transformed into a top-secret research facility. The scientists worked under conditions that were far from ordinary. The area was locked down, with guards patrolling the perimeter, and everyone, even the families of the scientists, lived under strict surveillance. Nobody outside of the project knew what was truly being built in that remote corner of the world. There was no room for errors. Every day, every moment counted. As much as the scientists worked to solve the mysteries of the atom, they also faced the pressure of secrecy. The world could not know what they were doing, and even those closest to them were kept in the dark. The facility grew, becoming an isolated, self-contained world. Cafeterias, dormitories, and even movie theaters were constructed to keep the workers focused and provide a semblance of normalcy in the midst of the intense pressure. The stakes were high, but the workers were driven by the belief that their work could bring the war to a swift end. As the months passed, the scientific breakthroughs continued. The team at Los Alamos developed and refined their designs for the bomb. Two types of bombs were conceived: a uranium-based little boy and a plutonium-based fat man. The challenge was immense, and there were moments when success seemed just out of reach. But on July 16, 1945, the moment of truth had arrived. The Trinity test, as it would later be called, was set for the early hours of that summer morning. In the dead of night, the scientists, military personnel, and a handful of invited observers gathered at the designated test site in the desert. For these men and women, the moment was both exhilarating and terrifying. They knew they were standing on the brink of something unprecedented. A successful detonation would change the course of the war and history. But there was also the lingering fear that, if they failed, the world might be left at the mercy of an atomic-powered enemy. As dawn approached, the countdown began. There in the dry, dust-choked desert, an enormous steel tower had been constructed, and at its peak sat the first atomic bomb, a towering and enigmatic device. The air felt thick with tension, as every person on the site knew the potential consequences of what was about to occur. As the seconds ticked down, Oppenheimer, whose mind had given birth to the weapon, stood quietly at the front. His heart raced, and his thoughts must have been filled with conflicting emotions: pride in their scientific achievement, fear of its ramifications, and perhaps even a sense of guilt about the destructive power they had unleashed. Then, at 5:29 a.m., the world changed. A brilliant flash of light, so intense that it temporarily blinded those in its path, lit up the sky. The ground shook beneath their feet. And for a fleeting moment, the air was still. The bomb had detonated. The Trinity test was a success. The blast left behind a massive, mushroom-shaped cloud that rose into the heavens, a terrifying symbol of humanity's ability to wield nature's most destructive forces. The desert, once an empty and lifeless place, had now become the stage for the birth of the atomic age. The shockwave rattled windows hundreds of miles away, and the sound of the explosion reverberated across the entire landscape. There was no turning back. But the full impact of the test wasn't immediately clear. While the explosion itself was a technical success, the moral implications were far less certain. In the days following the test, the United States government moved quickly to hide the true scale of the bomb's power from the world. The success of the test paved the way for the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, which brought about the end of World War II. But the devastation wrought by the atomic bomb was also a haunting reminder of what humans had now created: a weapon capable of wiping out entire cities in a fraction of a second. In the aftermath of the Trinity test, the global political landscape would be forever altered. The Cold War would soon take center stage, and the nuclear arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union would shape international relations for the next several decades. The threat of nuclear war became a part of daily life, and the shadow of the bomb loomed large over every nation. But even as the fear of nuclear weapons grew, New Mexico's desert remained a quiet testament to the birth of the atomic age. Today, the Trinity Site stands as a memorial to that moment of history, a place where humanity crossed a threshold that would forever alter our relationship with science, warfare, and power. And as we look out over the vast expanse of the New Mexico desert, it's hard not to wonder, what price did we pay for the power to control the very forces of nature? And what will the legacy of the atomic age mean for the generations to come? The answer perhaps lies hidden in the heart of this remote and unforgiving land, where history was made in a flash of light and the world was forever changed.